What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Above Average Podcast. Here we are in our new studio. I'm Will. This is Ethan. Today we're joined by Devon Kroesche, a dietitian with Case-Specific Nutrition.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Welcome. The studio setup is almost done.
Yeah.
As you saw when you walked in.
It is way more professional than what I've ever been on, so
Thank you.
Love it.
Wow, that's the best thing we've heard so far.
Yeah. As we struggle to find just the screwdriver to fix one thing.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But, no, I mean, our last setup wasn't bad, but this is definitely more legit.
Yeah, the old one was good, but it was in one spare room of my apartment complex.
Okay.
But pros and cons, but it was next to this giant window, and the only thing that was a complaint, which you guys probably have noticed in a video or two, we're borderline sweating because it was giant windows,
huge magnifying glass.
It just looks really nervous.
It just
all the
it
time.
just turned into being such a hot room.
Like an ant under a micro.
Pretty much.
What do you call it?
Microscope.
Yeah.
Magnifying glass.
Magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Pretty much. No, it's crazy how warm we're getting there. I mean, we're talking by the time we finish recording, it'd be 80 degrees.
We'd just be sitting there still, talking, but don't move, and you're fine.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I'm sweating when the cameras are recording no matter what, just because we're on camera, I don't think that'll ever go away from me. But then you throw in the sunlight and the heat, it's bad news. But
I have to say, I listened to a few of your episodes and I love them. I love the episode with Ian, your client.
Yeah, my client.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, that was a beautiful story. I love
that.
So
was
good.
really cool.
That was such a good one.
Yeah.
And then,
no, go ahead. What's the other one?
what are you going to say?
I was just gonna say that episode has come back. He's pumped it out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the few ones where he's been since it came out, he's I went into work today in he's a funeral director, and he said I think it was their chaplain maybe, for the funeral home, came in crying because she listened to his episode, and she was I never knew this about you, and it's just crazy how he's been telling me so much about how hyped people are for him. It's great.
I love the goal setting one too, because I think you got into a little bit of how people towards the end of the year are we'll just start fresh in the new year. And I'm I feel we're on the precipice of that right now.
We are. Yeah.
I totally experienced that as a dietitian too. I always joke with my clients. I'm it's weird. No one wants to talk to me between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah. And it's 2 days, two and a half days really.
Yeah.
And
it's they're holidays. They're not months.
Right.
And then I'm sure for both of you get a whirlwind of people right after Jesus, I need to get it together.
Oh yeah.
It'll never
my
stop.
head is spinning from January to March, and then
It's crazy.
Oh my God, I figure,
come up for air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figure, man.
It doesn't make it. I don't know what we're going to do. And I think when we get into the nutrition stuff, I think a lot of this stuff I find myself getting frustrated with, because I'm it's simple. It's simple. It's all simple.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's just so many people that have these learned conceptions or behaviors that are just always going to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that the holiday thing is a big one.
Yeah. I asked a therapist colleague of mine recently, do you ever unlearn some of these crappy mindsets and habits that you develop? And she was no.
Yeah.
She was you just start to recognize them and catch yourself a little bit quicker. And I was
That's promising.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit. I'm like this forever.
Yeah. I'm screwed.
But yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is great. So, just background, right? So you went to Pitt.
Yep, that's where we met.
That is where we met, right? So and it's so different now compared to what it was. I mean, I don't know if you've been in the Peterson Sports Complex since college.
I haven't actually.
Well, they added another floor onto the top.
Jesus.
The nutrition center is now a room. It's not a desk anymore. That's where
it's not a little rolly cart that I would sit with my snacks.
Nope. Yeah. So that's where we met. Yeah. So in college, were you
I was a sports nutrition intern for Pitt Athletics.
Okay. Yeah.
Under Auburn Weissensale. She just got married. She's got a new last name now.
That's right. She did.
But she's a beast. I mean, I can't give her enough credit, because she's not just the director of the sports nutrition department for Pitt Athletics. She made it.
Yeah.
She made it what it is.
Pitt Fuel, right? That's her thing.
Pitt
yeah.
Fuel. But anyway, so that's where we met.
Yeah. So in our facility, there was a nutrition center, which at the time, this is 2016, there's just a banner that said nutrition, and there was a desk with a bunch of granola bars and there was a fridge at one point too.
And a sophomore named Devon with the
Yes.
Pit Nutrition t-shirt sitting
Yes.
behind the...
Yeah.
Seems legit.
Sitting behind the desk to make sure no one took more than they were supposed to take.
There was like a point system and like
Yes.
a paper chart
Uh-huh.
thing. And
Yeah.
people were like, Devon, don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Take an extra chocolate milk today.
Yeah. The Jimmy Dean breakfast sandwich was 5 points.
I feel like that was your specialty right there.
I didn't really mess with those too much.
No?
They're gross, dude. They're not good. You put them in the microwave, they're disgusting. But now, so where the equipment room was, like right next to
Yeah.
that, they like opened that whole thing up, and that's now like a whole room of food. Like there's a counter, they make smoothies. Like it's
Awesome.
crazy.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's improved a ton.
That's awesome.
Which is
Pit
great.
Soccer was killing it this year too.
Yeah, they just lost last night.
I know. My fiance was actually there.
Yeah.
It was a bummer.
I was going to
1-0.
go 1-0. And it was a mistake. The goal was a mistake, too. To lose as the number 1 team in the nation to an unranked team on a mistake is a bummer. But they'll be okay. This happens all the time. Ohio State lost last night. They were number 2 in the nation. They lost to an unranked team. So,
Upset season.
yeah, it's just how it goes. Those teams lose at least once during the season. So, it'll be good. But anyway, getting into
Sorry.
nutrition. No, it's all good. So, I think... This is exciting because I wanted to do this for a long time.
He has been talking about this for a while.
I'm so
Long
sorry. I
time.
kept putting you off. It's been a crazy summer.
No, I mean we were transitioning to the new studio anyway. It's all good, but I think with what I do, as a trainer and a coach and stuff, like nutrition is just like at the forefront of everything, right? And there's a lot of things that I'm saying as a coach, but I think everything carries more weight when it's coming from a registered dietitian, because there is this weird divide. And,
Yeah.
if you go on
Church and
like
state.
Twitter or Threads or whatever, there's always people posting things about like, if your trainer's giving you nutrition advice, run away. And like, it's constant. And there's always something being said about something else. And so to clear the air, this is going to be great. So I think the place that I want to begin is, so I noticed that tends to be this divide between like calories in, calories out for weight loss, gain, whatever. And then there's this other group of people on the other side of that talking about like gut health and hormones
Biohacking,
and
your
yes,
metabolism.
yeah, micronutrients and all kinds of stuff. And so maybe there's some overlap in there, but like what's happening here?
Oh my gosh, where do I begin? So nutrition, it can be really simple. And that's why I really appreciate the way that you articulate it. Like I've seen
Thank you.
your Instagram reels dressed in your banana suit, just to like really like, I don't want to say dumb things down, but like simplify things for people. And it really depends on your goals, right? So like some of my clients do have gut dysbiosis, right? As a dietitian, especially, what we do is medical nutrition therapy. So we are preventing or treating illnesses through the power of nutrition, behavior, lifestyle. As far as like body composition change, it is a calories in, calories out thing. And when I guess I say body composition change, I mean like body composition, like loss or gain, whether that's body fat, muscle, etc. So it really is a calories gain. But the more challenging piece is, how do you figure out how many calories you're actually needing for whatever goals you're pursuing? And then also, how many calories are you getting? How are we quantifying that? That's a very challenging thing to do. They've done studies where they've had dietitians track their calories and they're off by about 25%.
Ooh,
Dietitians.
that's crazy.
We're supposed to be
Whoops.
the best at this.
Yeah.
So all that to say, it's very hard to quantify exactly. That's why I tell my clients all the time, don't let the perfect become the enemy of the good, right? Like let's focus on the basics. Let's get B+. If we're doing calorie tracking, let's shoot for B+ tracking, right? Because you're never going to get to 100%. Even your McDonald's fries that you think are 550 calories, I don't see the kid in the back weighing your French fries before he puts them in the container.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you're never going to get it totally exact. So just do your best if that's what you're going for, is like that body composition change. But sometimes people kind of misconstrue dietitians as like just like the weight loss coaches. That's very much like not what we do. Like I said, we can treat gut dysbiosis. We can help reverse chronic disease progression. We can do all those sorts of things. We can order labs. We can kind of like, raise some red flags in terms of maybe some like metabolic conditions that are concerning, like insulin resistance, and point them in the right direction towards an endocrinologist or other relevant specialists. So it's a cool world of nutrition. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to uncover, but as far as like calories in, calories out, that's an accurate statement, right? That's physics.
Right.
But the more challenging part is like, okay, what do we do with that information? How do we quantify that effectively? And then like, how can we translate that to like how we're actually living? And that's kind of the world where I live in. Like, yeah, we can calculate macros and calories. And for the record, I don't have any issues with coaches giving people some basic calories and macros. Really, I'm not one of those dietitians that's like, stay in your lane. Like, I think we actually really need each other. Like I'm always promoting the benefits of, strength training and other forms of training to my clients. But at the end of the day, I'm like, you're going to have to talk to a trainer for the specifics. Like, I'm going to try my best to stay in my lane, but I'm not going to not talk about it because I am just the measly dietitian, not the trainer.
Sure. So. Yeah. I mean, there's overlap. I mean, there's room for overlap. And
yeah,
that's how I always felt too, is even before getting into the world of like certifications and whatever, it's like, I still live life. Like
you're still a person.
Yeah. Like I have experience with working out. I have experience with, changing the way I eat to achieve a certain body composition, and then the second you put, I don't know, a logo on it, it becomes like, oh, what are you doing?
It would be like a therapist wagging their finger at me for asking how my client's feeling or, like inquiring about like, how's your depression been, right?
Right.
Like,
that's crazy.
I'm not trying to treat them for it, but I care and I want to ask and I want to, help guide them in the right direction. I'm not, I don't think that's overstepping.
No, definitely not.
Well, yeah, because it all works together. Like it always all works together, because your whole day includes all these things and they all come up. It's not like you only eat all day and you only lift all day. Like it's not so separation. Like you're going to do one and then the other, then like it's just going to keep going like that. So what, just out of curiosity here, so like if you had to break it down into like a good simple term, like what are like the 10 commandments of like just dietary starting points, I guess you could say. Like if you had to break it down into like what is like a good starting points for just people to like start getting into, and then I think we can probably talk more of the specifics of like sports athletes and different ways that different diets are either construed or done like really well.
Yeah. Totally. And like I said, it totally depends on your goals, right? But when I think about optimizing a client's nutrition, I kind of think of like, you can imagine these like Venn diagram of like 3 intersecting circles: quality, quantity, and timing. So when I'm trying to optimize my client's nutrition, I usually actually start with timing. So I just really want to know, like, what do you eat over the course of a day? And then we kind of figure out, like, are you eating at appropriate intervals for you and your goals? My GI clients, they need to eat a lot more frequently because their gut usually just can't handle that much food at once. Some of my other clients with like insulin resistance need to have more spaced out timing between their meals. But timing is usually a big one because that kind of leads me to the next one, which is diet quality. And when I say quality, I mean just balancing out your plate appropriately. So there are different ideological ideologies around nutrition. Like you should be carnivore, you should be keto, you should be Mediterranean. Oh, yeah. I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but generally speaking, I want my clients to be shooting for each meal to have a carbohydrate, a fat, a protein, and some produce. So ideally it's like, a healthier fat. Ideally it's like a leaner source of protein, like a complete source of protein as well. Ideally they're getting a complex carbohydrate as opposed to like a simple carbohydrate like white bread or white, pasta, cookies, crackers, chips, that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, I want those 4 components. When I say quality, that's what I'm talking about. And we even will talk about like a plate breakdown just to make it super simple. Like, for example, my athletes, my people who need a lot of calories, I'll say, I really want you to shoot for half of your plate to look like carbohydrates. And a quarter of it should be protein, a quarter of it should be produce. If someone's, just like a general healthy living person trying to maybe either lose weight or just maintain a healthy body composition, we'll be shooting for about half of your plate to be produce, to really fill up on that fiber and those high nutrient foods without kind of overloading on the calories. Quarter of your plate carbs, quarter of your plate protein. This is just like very general basics. So are we timing our nutrition well throughout the day? Are we balancing out that plate appropriately? And then the last piece is quantity. So that is the how much. And what I tend to find, and I always give my clients some very like easy parameters, like shoot for like 1 cup cooked of a carbohydrate at each meal, things like that. But generally speaking, if we have our timing figured out, if we have our plate balance figured out really well, they're actually able to control that portion size pretty intuitively, especially if they don't have like a severe history of like yo-yo dieting, crash dieting, that kind of thing. I am trying to guide them towards actually trusting their bodies a little bit more, because at the end of the day, I can calculate their macros. I can give them estimations for portion size, but at the end of the day, they're going to need more on some days and less on others. And instead of just, bypassing that like internal signal, I want them to actually lean into it a little bit more. Like, hey, Devin, I ate my 2 cups of broccoli and my 6-ounce piece of chicken, and I just didn't really have enough time, or I didn't have enough space to finish my rice. And I'm like, that's good. That's a sign that you're listening. So that's kind of like the tenets, like the quantity, quality, and timing. And that's kind of the order I usually progress them in. And generally speaking, I always just think about what are the things that we're most often lacking, especially in Western American diet. Fiber, protein, those are the 2 big ones, and then just generally produce. So I think that's where a lot of the push for like a vegan plant-based diet came from. And for the record, I've been a lifelong vegetarian. I don't preach that. You didn't know that?
I did not know that.
That's good. That means I'm not talking about it too much.
That is actually true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't hear that often, but I don't, push that on anyone. But what I've found, or what I suspect to be helpful in the research about the health benefits of a vegan diet, is that they just include more plants. It's not necessarily that they're cutting things out. It's that what are they displacing that diet with? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyways, those are kind of like the major tenets, the how much, the quality, and then the timing. So once we get that organized, we can really further curate and iterate what they need to do. But just like a general healthy living person, it's a really good place to start.
Talking about being vegetarian, right? Not vegan. Vegetarian. So
if she was vegan, we would have known.
Right.
Sure,
we would have known. Yeah, we would have known that.
That's such a bad statement, but it is kind of true.
It is kind of true, yeah. In terms of protein, so I mean, when you talk about people that are vegetarian versus just not, right? There's always the talk about bioavailability of vegetarian sources of protein.
Totally.
And I think I've asked you this before, but say, I don't know, you need to get 150 grams of protein per day. Mm-hmm. If you're doing that from vegetarian sources or vegan sources or whatever, do you now need to shoot for more than 150 grams because of that bioavailability thing? Or does it really not matter? And this is a specific question. I mean, I'm not like in general population, but if someone really wanted to like lock it in.
Generally speaking, yes, I would probably increase their protein intake by about 10 to 20%.
Okay.
If it is from mainly plant-based sources. So I'm talking not like your eggs and dairy, but like literally just like beans, legumes, lentils, that kind of stuff. And the reason why is the fiber. So when you talk about bioavailability, I think you're asking is like, yeah, you're consuming that protein, but how much of it is actually getting absorbed and used for what we want the protein to be used for? And it is slightly diminished because a lot of those protein sources, like your beans, your lentils, things like that, are bound up in a lot of fiber. And fiber, by definition, is the portion of the food that your body can't digest and absorb. And so that's really good because it ends up being food for your gut bacteria and really helping that microbiome stay nice and diverse. But then you're not absorbing those nutrients. And so in that case, we would slightly increase their protein intake. But to be honest, like usually we're just trying to get them to that goal in the first place. Plant-based sources of protein can be tough to get. But I always tell my clients, like if you're going to be following a vegan diet, your carb should almost always be a high protein carb. So, instead of like your cookies, crackers, and chips that are pretty much devoid of protein, we want to be focusing on things like beans and lentils for your carb source, or quinoa, things like that, things that are a carb really, but they have protein. Same thing with your fats. Like, maybe we're focusing on peanut butter as, a more common fat than like oil or butter because it's a fat that has some protein. So it's just you kind of have to piecemeal it together.
I had tried a vegan diet for 6 months. 6 months, and that was an interesting experiment. So I had give it a try.
Your face.
I could never.
Me up.
Could never.
Well, but there's a little reason behind it. So when I came back from a deployment, I was having like a lot of like gut issues. I'd gotten sick over there a couple times. We were exposed to genuinely not good water and stuff like that. Very frequent problem for the military bases overseas. And I came back and I was having just like super bad gut problems. So I was trying ways to figure it out. So what I'd noticed is like certain meats seemed to mess me up, and it messed up like my stomach. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna cut them all out. Yeah. So I tried to go like vegan for 6 months just to see what would happen, and it didn't change any of my gut issues per se. Generally speaking, and I probably did this wrong, but I feel like I was like a really bloated a lot of the time and more fatigued. But I might not have been doing it right because I didn't have any coaching, right? So I was really just experimenting with, okay, get enough protein in, but how?
Yeah.
And the how was really challenging.
Tough,
and I
especially
did
if you're
eat
someone
quinoa.
who lifts weights and, you know.
Right. So I don't think the result was a benefit. So then I had to end up switching it. And later on, I had figured out kind of what works for me. But it was interesting to try. Have you tried anything like that? Like a dietary area that like was, you know, like kind of extreme. And I'm saying the words extreme because that one is a big jump for most people.
I did paleo in college.
Really?
Yeah. You didn't know that? I thought I told you that.
I don't think so. No.
Oh yeah. I mean, this predates like the version of myself that I am now. Like I knew nothing back then. And I was aware of the paleo diet because Tim Howard, the goalkeeper for the national team, I'm pretty sure he still is paleo. Like he always has been. And this is funny. As you guys were talking about that, I was thinking about this. But, you know, when it comes down to it, right, like at the end of the day, the best diet is the one that works for you.
1,000%.
You know, that's going to get you the things that you need.
Yeah.
So with paleo, like I never really thought it was like a bad diet at all because, I mean, it's all nutrient dense whole foods, you know, and like very high protein. I got ripped up. I mean, I went from 15% to 8.5 in a summer, maybe a little more.
Damn.
And that was, I mean, we're running 4 days a week, lifting 3 days a week, playing soccer every single day. And my whole family did it, which made it really easy. But my mom was shopping for produce every 2 days because we were just going through it.
Just ripping through it all.
Yeah. And it's funny because there's a book called Paleo Diet for Athletes. I never actually read it, but I have it.
Love that energy.
Yeah. So, but I remember coming back to preseason, I said to one of my coaches, because like the whole reason that this happened was because I went into our head coach's office, and I've told this story so many times, but he was like, you know, your body fat's like 14%. Like you got to get that under 10, like for performance reasons. And to me, I was always like, okay, you know, fine, I'll do it. And this is like, we just got a new head coach. So I was like, I've got to now prove myself that I do the things that I say I'm going to do. And so I came back and, you know, body type completely changed. And at the time I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's the whole foods that, you know, got me shredded. And then one of my assistant coaches was like, well, no, you just ate less for a really long time. Yeah. And I was like,
yeah, you were just in a calorie deficit.
Like, maybe. Right. I don't know about that.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, now that you say it, like, that's probably it.
So they had talked to you about like your body fat for your sport.
Yeah.
To me, that sounds insane. But also, like, I have problems with this, like, for sure, with athletes. Like, I really do. I was in wrestling when I was really young, and they tried to get me, like, in high school to cut weight freshman year.
Yeah.
I hadn't even had growth spurt. And I told the guy, I'm like, I'm not cutting weight.
Wrestling's different.
Yeah, but this transferred over to the Army, because in the Army, that was a big issue, too, where if you have a certain weight, then they do, like, a tape measuring test, and then you're, like, flagged as, like, oh, you're possibly too fat. But in my opinion, as long as you're doing your job, I don't really care what you look like.
Sure.
There is some exceptions to like, well, what if somebody's injured and they need to be moved out of a Humvee and they're 300 pounds? Some dude might also just be 6'5".
Yeah.
And he's driving with me and I'm 5'8". Well, it's just going to be like that. You know what I mean? Right. So I find it strange that in soccer they had that. I just find that shocking.
Ask the dietitian.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, so I have some problems with this stuff as well. I can't speak to your specific or everyone's specific scenario, but one of my areas of specialty happens to be eating disorders. So I see the downstream effects of some of these pressures to attain a specific body type. And certainly within certain sports, I mean, you probably saw some of the Olympics that happened this past summer. You definitely do tend to see a specific archetype in certain sports, and they're more often body types. And those body types are very different. Like, you know, a linebacker's body composition should be very different from a soccer player's composition. But then there gets to be this kind of, you know, language about, well, if you don't have this specific body type, then you're maybe not made for the sport. And that I somewhat disagree with. Maybe, you know, at a certain level of competition, when you get to the higher levels of competition, it does start to get a little bit more challenging to not totally fit that body archetype and still perform, depending on the sport and depending on, you know, whatever it is, your position, things like that. But like in your case, I know that is oftentimes like a thing, like, hey, we'd like to get you within this body composition range because we believe that you'll be faster. We believe that you will perform better.
That's exactly the way I took it.
Yeah.
Like I never looked at it as like, I don't look the part. It was purely like, if you get under 10%, like your performance will increase.
Yep, totally.
And, yeah.
And that's always something, because I've worked with athletes, that's always something that we're kind of juggling. Like, hey, you might perform better within this body composition range, this body fat percentage range. However, we're not going to sacrifice, fueling you appropriately for performance. We're not going to sacrifice sleep. We're not going to overtrain you to help you achieve that. So we tend to see that, like, eating well and sleeping well, recovering well, it tends to be way more important than achieving that specific body fat composition.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's kind of like prioritizing. So as far as I'm concerned, the body fat percentage is a little bit lower on that list of priorities than, are you actually fueling well? Are you recovering well? Are you training appropriately, not overtraining or undertraining? So
to go back to add on to this, because I just wanted to just hear how preposterous this was for the Army, but that tape test was just taping around your waist and your neck.
Yep.
So if your neck was too skinny and your waist was big, you're flagged.
Yep.
But if you have a bigger neck, so like there were some guys that were just bigger, but they kind of had a skinnier neck, and like they literally worked on getting their neck thicker because they were just the way they were built was just like not really, like they weren't going to get that much thinner.
The tape test is notoriously
horseshit.
inaccurate for assessing body composition. We have such better and even affordable methods now.
Oh my God.
But government bureaucracy, they tend to move slowly in terms of updating things.
Yeah.
Right. But like, I mean, how crazy is that if you pass a PT test well, but you're big, then you get weighed. Well, I guess everybody gets weighed. But then if you're over on your weight, like for me, I would have been overweight and needing a tape test at the weight of, I think, 175 for my height.
That's insane.
That's
I'm
like
like
BMI,
177 right now.
Yeah.
So I would have been like needing a tape test, which I would have been fine because I also had like at the time like a 6-pack, but I was just bigger. Like I was all like upper body. But I'm like, that would have been too much weight. So the guy who's 6'1", I mean, his weight was only like it was like 195. And I'm like, that dude's like 235.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So what
and
they're
we need him
basing-
to be 235.
It's insane. I mean, like, so what they're basing that off of primarily is like BMI.
Mm-hmm.
So that's literally just taking into account your height and your weight. And this was you maybe heard this, but it's a metric that was developed by a mathematician in the 1890s that only used white men. And so we can see
Classic.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No, I had no idea where that came from.
So,
Freaking white men are the enemy again.
and he literally had said, and when he like put this BMI chart out, that this should not be used to assess health.
Wow.
And yet this is what
You just
we
omitted
use.
that?
That's what insurance companies use to diagnose overweight obesity, to see if they will be covered to see a dietitian for free under their insurance. That's
insanity.
We use it for everything. So there are obviously some problems with that.
Yeah, I just thought it was preposterous. Now, like, again, like to use an extreme example, like if you took like the average dude probably on like a special forces team or something, most of them are not gargantuously big. They're actually pretty lean, but it's also because they've just done a lot of meticulous training, and it's kind of weeded out people that, it's a mix of like weeding out people that might have been the wrong everything, including physically, but then also you're working in one lane to get really good at like rucking and running and being able to lift and pull people. So you're going to just like kind of adapt your body. If you were playing football in college, now you're in special forces, you're going to be leaner.
Yeah.
There's just no way that you'll be like bulky because you're just like doing endurance all the time with weightlifting, and stuff like that. But the tape test it's a real thing. And then that's a marker on your job. And if you get taped a couple times and you don't lose weight, like you can get kicked out.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's
It's
insane.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I have got some friends who are Army dietitians, and they have to do the tape tests, even though they don't fundamentally agree with them.
Oh
but
my
that's
God.
just part of the job, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I hope they catch up.
Maybe one day. I've disregarded BMI for almost my entire life. Like once I learned
Same.
about what it was, I was like, this is stupid. Because like it's always, I've been overweight, like according to my
Really?
BMI, pretty much since high school. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, dude, I'm jacked. Like, what are you talking about?
It's just because it's like the shortness too mixed with it.
For sure.
Like if you had an extra inch or two,
Yeah. It wouldn't be, I'd probably be right where I'm supposed to be.
like just 1 inch,
I know.
like probably would have made no
Can't
difference.
give it to me. Yeah.
Can't-
No, I didn't
can't
get
give
it.
you an inch,
I
bro.
didn't get it. Yeah. No, I mean, no, not at all. But, next question. It's completely switching topics here,
Yeah.
but when it comes to like the calories in, calories out thing, right? And just talking about strictly weight loss, weight gain, a lot of the time people will say, I'm not eating anything at all. I'm only eating 1,200 calories and I'm not losing weight.
Mm-hmm.
What are the exceptions, if there are any, to where someone could potentially be eating in a deficit or not eating enough and they're just not dropping weight?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up, because if someone is eating in a calorie deficit and they're not losing weight, they are not in a calorie deficit.
That's what I would say. Yeah.
Period. End of story.
I'm glad you said that.
So the reason people get confused about that is because they'll go online and they'll use a calorie calculator to see how many calories should I be burning. And then they will try to eat whatever, 500 calories below that, let's say, to aim for like a pound a week of weight loss. Mm-hmm. And let's say we test that for a month. And by the way, if we're doing body composition, weight loss or gain, I don't assess their progress any more often than every 30 days.
Yeah.
Because we know of those natural, body composition changes and water weight and things throughout the month. Mm-hmm. And so I like to collect data maybe like weekly, and then kind of just take that average and see kind of how they're comparing month to month, just to get a broader spectrum. So sometimes it's that they haven't waited long enough. They haven't been patient enough.
Definitely.
They're 2 weeks in and they're like, what the heck? I haven't lost weight yet.
Yeah.
What gives? And it's like, it's been 2 weeks. We don't know. Especially like women tend to have a little bit more like fluctuation throughout their menstrual cycle. Men tend to fluctuate a little bit more because they usually have more water weight to gain and lose throughout the month. So those are some things to consider. So maybe they're just not being patient enough. Some other considerations is that maybe a calorie deficit for them is actually quite low. Like their true metabolic need is lower than what is coming up on those calculators. And that could be for a few reasons. They've done research on this. What they've shown is like two major categories of folks who their basal metabolic rate or their resting calorie expenditure is much lower than we would expect. One is people who have lost a dramatic amount of weight, especially over a short period of time. So not to like bring up the G word, but the GLP-1 agonists out there. So a lot of folks have lost significant amounts of weight in a very short period of time. And your body tries to adapt to that by significantly slowing down that basal metabolic rate, slowing down a lot of body processes to try to conserve energy. It's just working towards homeostasis. So that's what's happening there. Second scenario is folks that have just sort of yo-yo dieted a lot throughout their life, so done a lot of crash diets. And there is no such a thing as like starvation mode per se.
Wow, you're in my head right now.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
I know all the buzzwords, and but it is true that if you have calorie cycle, gone on really restrictive diets, lost some lean body mass, now your resting calorie expenditure is going to be lower, and then inevitably you fall off of that crash diet because it was too extreme, and now you're in a calorie surplus, and then you gain more body fat. Now you started at a higher weight and you still have weight to lose, but your resting energy expenditure is lower, so you have to cut your calories even further to experience that body fat loss, and it just continues and continues. Some of my perimenopausal women that I'm working with are really struggling with this because they've been on Atkins, they've been on Weight Watchers, they've been on, I'm not trying to throw shade to any one of those diets, but a lot of those diets, especially when taken to the extreme, can really suffer some lean body mass loss, and that makes that body composition change very difficult. And so those are the two big scenarios: people who have lost a significant amount of weight, especially over a short period of time, and people who have chronically yo-yo dieted because of that lean body mass loss.
Wow, that was perfect. Because I was going to take it in that direction, because I've asked you before, I've had clients that are, dealing with perimenopause or menopause or whatever. And then like you always like it's just so common to hear with those types of people, like they're like, the weight's not coming off, and I've heard other people talk about, and it's not something that I've ever actually done, but I've talked with other coaches who maybe only work with women who will say like, if there's a history of crash dieting or yo-yo dieting, then you actually need to bump the calories up and get them back to like a normal place in terms of just metabolic rate, right? And so is that it? My question was going to be, so then what do you do if you find yourself in that position to where your basal metabolic rate is so low that you really realistically can't put yourself into a deficit anymore?
Yeah. So those are really hard conversations to have with clients. And to be honest, sometimes they're not ready or willing to take this on. But I truly believe that my clients should not be in, unless they're like kind of in that more morbidly obese category, I typically don't have them in a calorie deficit for more than like 4 months out of the year. So that's like, ideally like 8 months out of the year, they're actually like maintaining or even gaining some muscle mass. So in the case of the perimenopausal woman who her true basal metabolic rate is like 800 calories, which we do see that, there's not a world where they're going to be able to cut enough calories or exercise enough to effectively lose weight. So I have that conversation like, hey, your body's not ready to lose weight right now safely. And so we're going to focus on building your strength. I'd be connecting them with a strength trainer to have them focus on like real, not, bikini body workout on DVR or whatever, like true effective strength training to help them gain that lean body mass and then fuel them appropriately. So we say, just so you know, the goal is not body fat loss right now. The goal is for you to gain some muscle. So that might mean that your body composition, your body fat percentage might stay the same or more likely even go up slightly. And that's just preparing your body for that future body composition change that you're going to find more favorable.
I can't imagine having that conversation.
It's so hard.
Because the people that always end up in these positions are the ones that like,
it's everything.
You could never tell them that. You could never say, you're going to eat more right now. Because they'd be like,
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. And that's where I kind of pull in that emotional piece too. And so talk about their body image, something called body capital, which I, again, just recently learned from a therapist, which is your body image is kind of like how you perceive your body, but your body capital is like how much weight do you give that when evaluating your self-worth? And I find that women, especially of a certain age, their body image is everything to them. It's really such a big part of their identity that they are willing to sacrifice the long-term, vision of preventing things like osteoporosis, preventing a fall because they, don't have enough muscle mass because they're so focused on staying thin. And so that's a real problem, but, that's something that we really work through. And again, sometimes it takes them some time. They're like, okay, that sounds great, Devon, but I'm just going to go try Optavia and eat 800 calories for the next month. I'll let you know how it goes. And it's hard.
Do you, I guess this kind of goes for both you guys. What does that look like generationally? Because I feel like there is a generational difference between, like when I talk to my parents and like I see similar thought processes about the same thing. It's about an image look more than an image like functionality or longevity.
Yeah.
What have you noticed between generations with that? And then how has that strategy of education been different between those people like us? And shoot, I don't know if you have anybody younger than, 25, but I mean, I'd be very curious if you do, like what you would talk to them about, because they live in such different worlds of education.
Totally. I find my younger, my younger clients tend to get it really much more quickly because they understand that strength training is important. It's something that's now being marketed, especially to women, in a way that hasn't for a very long time. And so my older women, especially as I'm speaking about women, the majority of my clients are women. So a lot of times with my older women, I'm educating them on why this is important, not just for aesthetics, but for functionality and performance and longevity. And my younger women, they just tend to get it a little bit more quickly. They're like, yeah, I know I'm supposed to strength train. Like, I know that that's important. So it's usually a little bit of an easier sell. But you definitely have to speak to it a little bit differently. And another thing you mentioned, kind of like aesthetics, like and goals and things like that. I think I get it. We live in a society where we're evaluated on our appearance. I can't get rid of that. And I don't think that's, I'm not shaming my clients for having like aesthetics-based goals. I totally get it. But I usually tell them like that can't be our only goal. We need to have some other goals. Like I really have them like lean into the trainer and say like, hey, can we set some performance-based goals? I'd love to get a pull-up or a push-up, or, I'd love to be able to bench this much. So I usually try to have them have some non-scale related goals, some non-aesthetics based goals, just so that they have more opportunities for wins. And a lot of times if they think that like, if I get to X amount of weight, I'll look like I did when I was 25, and they're not going to. Even if they get there, they're just not going to. And so rather than just set them up for disappointment, we need to figure out like why this actually matters to you, and kind of like set some maybe performance-based goals, some non-scale victories, things like that.
100%. I tell people all the time, like, focus on becoming the strongest, fittest version of yourself that you can be.
Yeah.
Everything else will follow that.
Yeah.
Like if you can do 50 straight push-ups, it's pretty likely that you look like you can, But then people, especially people in the world of like they want to refrain from the gym, like they're intimidated by the gym, or they don't want to get bulky, you know, because that's what everybody says to me. Like, hey, I don't need to lift all these weights because I don't need to get huge. I'm like,
I'll be like, me and you have talked about this. Be like,
don't work like that.
At the rate that we've been working out, me and you shouldn't be able to walk through doors.
I should be benching 700 pounds.
You shouldn't be able to put your arms down.
Right. And I can magically somehow. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely people that want the aesthetic result without the hard work of lifting weights.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to help those people because you like kind of can get them into lifting, but then they just don't know what it's like to really push the envelope. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, I don't like this. And I'm like, well, there's no real other way to do it. You know, like
this is the way.
Yeah. There's people that think that you can look like the cover of Men's Health by just losing fat. And I'm like, no, you just don't have any muscle to show. Like you want the definition, you want the defined abs, but you got to remember that like you develop your abs the same way you develop your biceps. You know, like you could lose fat, but it's not going to show the way you want unless you actually develop it.
Yep.
And that's also complicated because I mean, strength training is the way, like we know that now. Like, yeah, there's room for cardio, there's room for all this other stuff, but until like everyone gets that, it's just, there's going to be those people that are just so lost with like chasing this goal, but not wanting to actually go on the route that it takes to get there.
Totally. And I talk to my clients a lot about like lead measures and lag measures, right? It's like kind of an analysis that's used in business a lot, but like your inputs versus your outputs, let's say. Mm-hmm. So your output, you know, your goal might be that I want to look X way, or, you know, I want to, you know, run a 3-minute or 3-hour marathon or whatever it is. That's an output. That's like a result. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need to set goals that are focused on the inputs, the day-to-day habits and behaviors that are actually going to get you there. Because again, I think it's, you know, without a plan, it's kind of just like this pie in the sky dream. But if they're going to have a goal, like that's an outputs-based goal, we need to have goals that are the inputs to actually help us get there. And so especially as they're getting started, I tell them like the goal right now is not that you're losing weight. The goal is that you're establishing you're eating on regular intervals. Yeah. Once we're establishing that, and then we can actually start to see those results, but the results aren't the goal right now. The goal is to set the habit so that you can see those results.
Yeah.
It's tough.
So I kind of want to play a game. If you want to play a game with me, Will?
Sure.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of a scenario. I'm going to use myself as an example, and I just want to see because I'm athletically training still at the age of 32. So we'll just kind of start there as a baseline. And I want to tell you where I fall short with like my own personal like dietary, how I set things up. And if you want to do this too, I'm just kind of curious what you do, because I don't think we really talked about this.
I'm gonna let her answer first.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
So I base all my meals around protein, and it's because I work out pretty much every day. So there's not as many rest opportunities. I change my workouts to kind of make sure I'm not like overly sore. I base all of my meals, about 4 of them a day. I try to do 4 a day, with protein being the first marker, and that's really the biggest thing I measure. And I go backwards from protein, and really 40 per, and everything else within that meal is extra. I'm not very good at proportioning out what should be what, but protein is always first. Mm-hmm. With that supplementation, I do a good stack of vitamins, and I'm not on TRT. So that also variable is not there. So where do you think I fall short being athletic and wanting to push that envelope with just that in mind? And I think that, by the way, took a lot of learning for me to understand that my protein that's made a noticeable difference in keeping my size and my strength and my recovery. But I want to know what areas I might be falling short to kind of do a better like next step.
What are your goals at this point?
Well, so this changes a little bit. I'm going to run a marathon in February.
Nice.
So now it kind of changes to, now I think I need to think about carbs instead of just adding them to like, all right, all my meat, that's literally 40 grams, whatever else I'm hungry for, I eat the rest.
Yep.
What would be a good next step? So I'm kind of transitioning a little bit into like being an endurance athlete for the next like couple months.
Very cool. Well, you said the C word and you read my mind. Carbs
I was
is
thinking
everything.
The same thing. Yeah.
I'm glad you were thinking it too. So yeah, as far as, and I'll say like I've ran 4 marathons, a bunch of trail races and stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, let's
Incredible.
go. I can't wait to hear about your marathon.
I hope I survive. Yeah.
But yeah, speaking as someone who's also done it fair bit of times. I would say the weird thing about endurance training, like for something like a marathon, is that you can't rely on that intuition that I talked about earlier. You really have to push past that satiety point. And so I think starting with protein is a really good place to start. And just the fact that you have structure is everything. The fact that you have some semblance of a plan is like getting you 90% of the way there.
Okay.
The rest is easy. You can just make little tweaks within there. But having like 40 grams, so it's 40 grams 4 times a day, basically.
Yes.
Plus maybe a protein shake or.
Like if I don't get a full meal, the protein shake is another where I'm like, I know exactly 1 scoop of this, 1 scoop of the collagen protein. I hit about 35 and then milk. And then so like it's 40.
Fantastic. So am I okay? Okay. Thank you. So definitely carbs is going to start to take your focus. And even as you get towards the end of that training cycle, when you're running 60 miles a week, when you have 18-mile runs on the weekends, you're definitely going to want to prioritize carbs even more so than protein, I would say. And, you know, I would say for you, probably like 2.5 cups of some kind of cooked carb per meal. So whether that's rice or pasta or potatoes.
Cookies. Cooked cookies. Yeah. Just like you said, right? The whole podcast.
Yep, all those cookies.
Keep it simple.
Get you there. But what I will say is that those endurance athletes, because their energy needs are so high, I actually have them start to shift, especially as they get towards really high energy needs towards the end of their training, towards more simple carbohydrates because they can stomach them easier.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
So more white rice, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So that's good because that kind of answers like a question and possibly a solution for somebody that's like, oh, I have a big goal and I'm like good in some areas. What else can I do? Because I've trained endurance, but not like really putting a good marker on it. And I can't say I've done it as good as I should have, you know, and I'm aware that I'm more prone to injuries and things, you know, are not going to be as easy as when I was 21. I didn't need to think about food and I could just kind of have good output just based on just age. You know,
I ate a lot of Pop-Tarts when I'm training for marathons.
Hell yeah.
You know, I love Pop-Tarts, but they gave me heartburn because I still have some GERD issues from whatever happened with my stomach over time. So like take a probiotic and I'm like all good to go. But like I love Pop-Tarts, but man, they kill me sometimes. I don't know why.
There are people
the
that
pumpkin pie ones are so
good. I've never had a pumpkin pie Pop-Tart.
They're so good.
'Tis the season, you know.
Those little freaks are up to new things every day.
Oh yeah. There's people out there. There's like bodybuilders and like coaches that like promote like eating Pop-Tarts like around working out. Like I've seen that here.
They're really helpful if you have really high energy needs. I'm not sponsored, guys. I just like them. Just
I wish we were. That'd be sick.
The thing I used in the Army for long rucks, where like I've done more endurance in rucking than in like long running. You know, like kind of maxed out on 5-mile runs for Army training, right? Not more than that, unless it was just like doing extra stuff. I'd just crush gummy bears. Yeah. Because I'd have a pack of them in like my pocket, my cargo pocket, because we'd ruck for like 3, 4, or 5 hours. So I would just have those because I could feel my dip in energy and go up really quickly. So I'm looking for like the honey stingers. I've been testing those.
Those are nice.
And did a few different kinds of gels for like during running to add carbs during, because I'm gonna get into that probably longer runs, probably like December timeframe. So
we'll talk more for sure. But I had a client who he would do like 100-mile plus races, and peach rings were his thing. He has like gummy peach rings.
Those are good. I do Sour Patch Kids.
Nice,
that's my go-to. Yeah.
But I would, so kind of just to wrap up your question, carbs, and also I would say starting to curate your timing a little bit more specifically. So like if for like let's say it's an 18-mile run, I usually have my clients get up like maybe like 2 hours before that and have like a bacon, egg, and cheese, like an actual like formal breakfast. And then maybe like closer to when they're actually getting out for the run, maybe have a banana, something like that, and then carry their rest of their nutrition with them. Oh God,
so, you don't want to hear about what I used to do then. Oh Lord.
No.
I mean, I would run the last training for any like long distance running. I just wouldn't eat before. I'd run like 13 miles.
Out here raw dogging a half marathon, dude.
How do you do me like that?
This was only like last year, and I was fine. I didn't even bring water with me. I was like, I should probably do that at least. But I'm realizing I'm like, if I'm pushing that, you know, I got to practice, because if the marathon comes and then I'm like, oh, I need carbs, and I just start doing stuff, I know that can mess you up, because then your stomach, like you haven't tested either products or just timing. And I'm trying to do better at that to make this like successful.
Train your gut like any other muscle.
Interesting. Okay.
Think about that way.
That's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
Will,
Yeah.
do you want to play the game?
Time to put you in the hot seat.
No. I mean, I think
He's like I start with Taco Bell.
Yeah, that's a
every
very
morning.
comprehensive answer right there. I mean, I was just gonna say carbs too, because I went through the whole when I was paleo.
Uh-huh.
It was like no carbs really. I mean, the only thing that was okay was a sweet potato. Like that was the only like real starch. Everything else was from fruit and vegetables. And so I was very, I don't know. I don't know if I was ever really anti-carb, but I was like, I didn't eat carbs. I got shredded. So I was like, that's the connection. And now, I mean, I eat a ton of carbs. I become more aware of the fact that like, with working out as hard as I do, like I need to eat carbs, and I still go around to whatever people are like, oh, I'm only eating like 80 grams of carbs a day. And I'm like, why?
Your brain uses like 130 a day.
I'm like, I'm eating like 400 during the winter.
Same.
Like, what do you mean? And some of the people, sometimes these are the conversations where I'm like people will look to me and want to know what I think. And I'm like, I'm not going to be the person to tell you you're wrong. You go find somebody else to do that. Cause I don't feel like having this conversation right now, but it's not 2004, it's crazy. And another question I wanted to ask, what's going on with seed oils? Are they killing us or what? Yeah, you're sick of that shit too, huh?
No, seed oils are fine. They're fine. Seed oils are fine.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
They're fine.
Is Kellogg's Corn Flakes more healthy than steak? That's my next one. That was also controversial.
Wasn't it Fruit Loops? No, it was. Yeah, it was Corn Flakes, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I forget what study that was exactly, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
I was like, talk about comparing apples and oranges. That's not even in the same universe. I'm like, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think some of the recommendations from like just the dietary guidelines on specific fats are sort of becoming outdated by the science. And so as far as like saturated fat, people always talk about lowering your saturated fat for improving heart health. Well, there's so many different types of saturated fat, and some are beneficial and some are less beneficial. So as far as like your animal-based fats from like steak and stuff like that, I'm not a big like you must buy organic or anything like that. I think largely it's like a big waste of money a lot of the time. But if you're going to invest in like, healthier fats, I would say like get your grass-fed pasture-raised steak. So like those animal-based fats, I would try to, and grass-fed butter, things like that tend to have a better fatty acid profile that tend to be less inflammatory, which is that
that's the word.
Inflammatory word that everyone loves to throw around. So I love grass-fed for that kind of stuff. And then as far as like your oils and other fats that you use for cooking, I like an extra virgin olive oil. I like an avocado oil. Vegetable oil, canola oil, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same level of benefits.
Yeah.
And the big argument with the seed oils is that the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is off. It's so high in omega-6s, which is inherently a pro-inflammatory essential fatty acid, whereas the omega-3s that you would find in like chia seeds and salmon are inherently like an anti-inflammatory fatty acid profile. And that is true. And it is also true that the Western diet tends to be very high in the omega-6s and very low in the omega-3s. That's not the reason we have an obesity crisis or a chronic disease issue, right? That's maybe a small piece of the puzzle. But I think when you take a very reductionist view of like this one thing is why.
It's very cherry picked.
Yeah. And it's fear mongering, and I don't like that. I'm big on education with my clients. And like, I really want them to understand the physiology as well as they possibly can for their, health literacy level. Just so that they can know how to make informed decisions. And generally speaking, I'm not for strict food rules. I'm like, let's try guidelines instead. Yeah. Because like food rules make you do weird things.
Right. I just got to ask, like, I know that you probably eat very, very well. This is your profession, so I'm sure you're probably on top tier. How good did you
brag about Pop-Tarts?
Yeah. But those are, that's top quality food in America.
That's fair.
That's true.
But like I noticed, like, how good did you feel in Greece when you were eating? Because I ate.
Oh my God.
There's something going on with our food still. Because at the end of the day, like, I pre-cook and like cook a lot of my own stuff, and like I try to do pretty good, like 85% of the time.
Yeah.
I go to Greece, I only ate local stuff. Like I can't even remember a chain. I don't think I went to a chain once. Which, by the way, I try to go to a McDonald's in every country I go to because they're remarkably different, and it's just fun to just go in and see.
What was Greek McDonald's like?
I didn't find one there because the small islands didn't have them, and so I missed my chance in Athens, and then I didn't come back to that goal of mine. It should be like a passport stamp. You went to the McDonald's in that country.
Portugal one wasn't very different.
No?
No, I got a Big Mac every time I went. I went to McDonald's like 9 times when I was in Portugal.
That you should be in jail for that.
I know. I was there for a month, and it got to the point where I was like, it was so hard to talk to people, and I was like, you know what? I just don't feel like dealing with the uncomfortable, of like.
So you go into McDonald's and
So I
point
go to
to the number
McDonald's.
one?
No, I go to the kiosk and I tap the screen, and then I'm like, there's my Big Mac, dude. It was just like I didn't have to talk to anybody.
Oh,
it was great.
Gosh.
But going back to what you were saying about like the fats and stuff, I just had a client ask me yesterday about so I had him like log his food for a day or something, and he logged like 1,000 calories worth of peanuts because he was like, I was just snacking on them and I didn't realize. And I was like, yeah, like that's the primo example of like how overeating nuts can like really inflate like your overall intake. And he was saying, he was like, well, what about like what do you think about like fat sources? Like where should I focus on getting them from? And I was like, I literally can't articulate this to you because there's so much to it. Like you've got the monosaturated or unsaturated, polyunsaturated, whatever. I don't know those off the top of my head, but I said to him, I was like, intuitively, you're going to get the healthy fats from the things that you think you're going to get the healthy fats from, right? Like trans fats, like fried food and stuff. Like obviously, before going into it that that's not going to be a good source of fat.
Yep.
Avocado, that's going to be a good source of fat. So if you just, stratify it in that direction, you'll be fine.
And generally, like a variety. Like people ask me the same thing about protein. Like what kinds of protein are the best? And
yes.
I'm like, a variety is the best. And same thing goes for fats. You need saturated fats. You need the MUFAs and the PUFAs, the monounsaturated, the polyunsaturated. You need all of them, generally from higher quality sources, generally from more of like a whole foods source. And that's actually one of the elements that I do like about the paleo diet. And if you need a good book on the paleo diet, Rob Wolf, I think it's called Wired to Eat.
Okay.
Really good.
Yeah.
Along with that other book that you read or didn't read.
I didn't read it. Yeah, it's okay.
But yeah, so I would say just like, same thing with the proteins, the starches, the fats. Just try to get a variety of sources from whole foods. Make that the majority of your diet. And then you have room for a fried chicken every once in a while. Go to Popeyes, enjoy it. Just make that a sometimes food, not
9 times. Will,
yeah,
geez.
in a month. I lost like 8 pounds coming back from Portugal, by the way. I walked so much.
It was definitely the McDonald's.
It probably was. Yeah, it's a weight loss food now, but which doesn't exist.
To your point, like, the food in Greece was incredible. And whenever anyone asks me how was Greece, I'm like, the food was amazing. And also
how much, like, it was not that expensive. But like I ate food that was from the land pretty much everywhere I went that I knew about, except for maybe Athens because, it's a huge city. And then I drank wine like every day, and it was like the best wine, the best food. And I was like, oh, man, if I was to move somewhere, this might be it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you get to go back, go to Carpathos and try macarones. They're so good.
Write that down.
It's like
you're going to have to write that down.
Spell it.
Yeah.
I brought a bag. It's like dried pasta, basically, but like noodles, they hand roll it. And I brought a bag back with me from this tiny little mountain village in Carpathos where they do everything by hand. It's so good.
We'll talk more because I will go back to Greece. It was a great trip, and there's so many places to go. I was like, oh, I got to go more. But the food, like I noticed like the Middle East was a different experience for a few different reasons. But when I was eating there and then I came back, I was like, man, I came back and started eating just food here. And I was like, man, I'm feeling like bloated again. I was like, weird. So I thought that was strange.
The wheat is like another thing. Like a lot of people who have like issues with wheat, they're like, I went abroad and I could eat pasta and pizza just fine. And there's a lot of questions about that. Like, what are they putting in the wheat here? And the answer is it's just a different type of wheat. And, people tend to tolerate it a little bit better, the stuff that grows in Europe versus here. Of course it is. So there's no like,
it's always
food corporation twisting his mustache.
Yeah, it's always the simple explanation.
Yeah, exactly.
There's never actually... It's like the government controls hurricanes. It's the same thing, Like,
oh, Mike, don't even get me started.
Birds
with that.
aren't real.
Everything's a conspiracy when you
Birds
don't
really
know how things work. Yeah, every time.
Everything's a conspiracy when you don't know how things work. So that is spot on.
Yeah,
true.
You see it everywhere.
So true.
I put that on my Instagram story this morning.
Yeah. Oh, I got something to tell you after this.
Okay. There was a video I shared. There's this guy. He's like Scottish, I think, and he does what I do. Was playing 2 different characters, and he had the one character was like. He's eating like Chips Ahoy, and he's like, the corporations are poisoning you and your family. And he's like, like the whole thing is, like probably not. I don't think they are. Like you can eat this stuff and still, have and be healthy, but you just have to do it the right way. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I talking about the seed oils and stuff, I think someone said, don't listen to people who capture your attention by using fear.
1000%.
That's how they all do it.
1000%.
Like they're in the grocery store aisle talking about oats are bad and whatever else. And it's just crazy. And
Don't trust anyone who's shirtless in a grocery store.
right. There was just a dude talking about crumble cookies and he was like, there's 90 ingredients in a crumble cookie. Like, yeah, it's 900 calories a cookie. Like, what do you think's going to happen? No one's going to crumble cookie because they want to be healthy.
Yep.
So like let people eat the friggin' cookie. Like it's not that big of a deal. That one time is not going to ruin your whole life.
Anyone who's kind of trying to tell you that is just wrong. But I appreciate what they're trying to do, sort of, because they're trying to say like, hey, this shouldn't be the majority of your diet. And for a lot of Americans, ultra processed foods are a majority of their diet.
Yeah.
Having a little bit is not going to kill them. But again, it comes down to like guidelines versus rules. Like a guideline could be like, I aim to make like at least 80% of my food mainly whole foods based. And, I try to have produce at every meal, but like I'm going to have a slice of pizza from wherever and it's going to be, I could have 90 ingredients and that's fine.
And that's fine.
So far, I'm okay.
The Costco hot dog, man. That's like,
Costco.
Oh, I'm never skipping a Costco hot dog, dude, for $1.50. Get out of here.
I don't care what diet I'm on.
Chicken bake,
Yeah.
$3.
So good, dude.
It's like 60 grams of protein and 800 calories. I'm like, that's bulk city right there, dude.
The pro
It's
move that
gaming
I've been
season.
doing
Yeah.
is getting the rotisserie chicken they have.
Same, $5.
Oh,
Can't
yeah.
beat it.
It's $5.
Can't beat it. Yeah,
and
can't
then
beat it.
I like meal prep with it and freeze it, but like
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
meal prep that with rice as like extra stuff.
my
'cause it's
fiance
so
does
easy.
that too.
It's amazing.
They
easy.
lose money on that, but that's how they get people in.
Yeah, they've said they're like, we're not changing the cost of the hot dog because it's just been the staple forever.
I think
I'm
like the owner threatened somebody.
what a G. He did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he actually did do that. Yeah,
He actually like threatened the new CEO.
How
yeah.
did we devolve to this?
I don't know. That's where we're
No.
just we've hit an hour and 4 minutes. That's how this is always how it happens. We get an hour in and then things just start to kind of just fall apart.
My favorite controversial character on the internet with anything related to food and fitness of any sort is the Liver King. Oh my god.
Oh, he's gone now. He's out of the spotlight.
I know, but he's so
Fall from grace, that guy.
It was so preposterous for him to be able to talk so highly about things that are good, like doing certain dietary things, and then him just being the most yoked dude on the planet, saying that's how he did it. And I was
No
like,
steroids. Crazy.
Anyone who works in this space is like,
Yeah, it's absurd. Like there's just no way.
right.
And
It's
yeah,
although that's been like I know we're probably coming towards the end of our time, but
Yeah.
that's been a thing that I've noticed lately is I've seen a lot of young guys that are more image based, kind of like what we had talked about. I think that's almost kind of the new wave of things is like younger guys getting on TRT like pretty young, like 21 years old to look a certain way on Instagram. That wasn't apparent when I was 21. Like it wasn't really, there was like bodybuilder community people, this is like 2012 or whatever. But it seems like it's like really abundant. Guys are image based way more than that's been like an influx I've noticed in the last, especially like maybe like 5-10 years.
yeah,
So
it's true, and it's a little scary.
I know it kind of makes me worried about the health of young guys, more on the lines of like hormones and having to, adjust to that later. But I'm sure the diet plays a big part of it too.
Yeah.
So there's pros with this because you get a lot of research with so many people that are promoting better lifestyles, but then you have really image-based focus that is like now in like pockets that's like growing. That's
And
I don't know,
have
kind of terrifying.
That conversation with my clients a lot is like, hey, what are our goals here? Are we focused on health or are we focused on aesthetics? Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes aesthetics comes at the price of your health. And so once we start getting close to that line, it's important to kind of form that distinction of like, what is our focus, right? So like, to a certain extent with like extreme athletes who are running like hundreds of miles in races, like that could actually shorten your lifespan. People don't like to hear that. And I'm not like, judging anyone who chooses to do it, but same thing with bodybuilding, right? That's a classic example of how there are elements of that are actually like, you're making sacrifices with your health rather than, promoting your health and longevity. And so that's an important thing to talk about and think about. And actually I've had clients where they've asked about like, oh, could you check my T levels? I ran their labs and I'm like, what are you taking? And it might not be TRT, it might be peptides, it might be something else, but it's really important to know what's going into your body, especially with stuff that's, the supplement industry is the Wild West. We know it's not regulated by the FDA, so you want stuff that's well tested, where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And that's where Plug for a dietitian.
There it
Who can
is.
No-
point you in the right direction.
What
Yeah.
a perfect segue. So where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram at Devon the Dietitian. So that's Devon. And the dietitian is dietitian with a T. So I'm not going to try to spell it out loud. Dietitian.
That sounds right to me.
Devon
You
the
were the one that
dietitian.
told me
Close
the
enough.
dietitian was spelled that way. I thought it was
Dietitian
with a
T,
C.
not with a C.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Autocorrect will lead you to believe it's with a C, but Devon the Dietitian on Instagram is the best place to find me.
Perfect.
Good.
All right.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me. This was awesome.
This was great. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, we were very hyped to be able to talk about this. I think it's very important for like our audience to kind of know a little bit more of the ins and outs and not believe everything they see with a shirtless dude on the internet in the grocery store, which is trending all of a sudden everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for like talking about nutrition, fitness. Like I think that we need more like positive influences. I love your approach. Like, what would this look like if it were easy? Kind of like meet you where you are. And then
you.
also like kind of fostering that independence in your clients. Like, hey, I don't want you to need me forever. It's like that Hinge slogan, like I'm designed to be deleted.
Deleted. Yeah. Yeah. I should start using that.
I tell my clients that all the time. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Yeah. This was awesome. We'll have to do it again.
Thanks for being on. And for everybody, thank you for watching. If you guys haven't subscribed, go check her out. Check us out also on YouTube and Spotify and Apple, and we are elsewhere.
Yeah. Other places. But
Apparently we're other places. If you find us
5-star
through other
review,
places-
Spotify.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can check out some reviews, subscribe to see some updates. We have some shorts that come out, and we'll have more guests here coming up in the new studio. Until next time.